Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are listening to us again. Thank you for joining us. And we're super happy to welcome again Stacey Harris with us. Thank you for joining us again. You're becoming a regular guest, and we're very happy to welcome you. And of course, Sherry.
Hey, everybody.
So, what has been happening in your life since last time? I think there were a couple of new reviews of the world of HR technology since. So, what's your take? Because the new one I think is due out soon.
So you're talking about the big annual HR system report, right? That we do each year. So
Yes.
and maybe because I think it has been almost a year and a half since we've last talked with your audience. So let me just recap who I am, and for anybody who I know you guys will have bios and stuff up. But for those who might not know me, I'm Stacey Harris. Like you said, I'm the Chief Research Officer at Sapient Insights Group, and we run the longest running, most in-depth research effort in the HR systems space. And that is a big annual report that we do every year. It is actually, I don't know when you guys will be posting this recording, but our dates are open from May through July 1st. So if you're anywhere before July 1st, the survey is still open. They can take it.
It will be, and there will be a link down there so they can take it.
Yes. And you guys are one of our supporters. We have a huge group of supporters and distributors who send the survey out. So they'll be seeing links from all over the organizations, events, conferences, media outlets, as well as the vendors themselves. Because our goal has been for the last oh my gosh, we're heading into the 27th year of actually publishing this big report, which kind of just makes me a little bit like, oh my goodness, are we really, we've been doing this long? I was 2, right, when I started all this, right?
Right.
I actually didn't start until 2014 was my first year. So before me was Lexi Martin. The audience might know her. She ran it for 17 years before that. I've now run it for over 10 years. And I'm passing the gauntlet to Cliff Stevenson, who is our director of research, who is doing a lot of the work this year, which has been nice to have a helping hand in getting things moving this year. And Tammy Smith, who is our data analyst. It's a labor of love for our organization at Sapient Insights Group. It was under a lot of other brand names, Sierra Cedar, Cedar Creststone, Hunter Group. This year, I think the most exciting thing about what we're doing is last year it ended up being 200 pages, 175 individual figures, data sets, pieces of information that had charts. This year, we're probably going to end up being bigger, which is hard to believe, but we're adding several new categories of HR technology that we're tracking. So we're up to like 53 different HR technologies that we track. That's categories. And that means that we have vendors' names and information about all of them. We also have what organizations are putting around those technologies, what strategies they're putting in place around them. So all of that continues to grow each year.
53 categories, meaning like categories like payroll, AI, those kind of categories?
Yes, exact. So payroll. So we go from everything. We have all the applications you would think in core HR, like core HR, payroll. We also do time and attendance, and we also do scheduling, and we also have all the talent management areas, learning and recruiting and performance management. But we also have things like rewards and recognition, and health and safety, and survey and feedback tools. I mean, everything from sort of the biggest tools that are in your sort of HR technology stack to the smallest tools in your technology stack. Because what we find is that becomes part of what an HR technologist is working on. They're not just working on one system anymore. So this year I think it's going to get bigger, just because the market we're living in is bigger. It's also going to have a lot of conversation about artificial intelligence, which we were just talking about before we got things recorded today. It's going to have a lot of talk about what is the new role of the HR technologist? How is their role changing? And change leadership, which I think is something that we've been talking a lot about, but I think is going to be, we're going to emphasize a lot more this year, really understanding how people are leading through change, not just making change a part of an existing HR technology strategy, but really actually leading the conversation in their organizations about how much change can we handle? What change do we really need? And is change actually having a better impact on our organization? So So
Interesting.
it's big. Yeah. So I don't know if that gives a good overview for your audience, but I love talking about any of the other things that we're going to be adding this year.
No, it was good. Good update for me.
It's a good update, and I think I'm super interesting. Well, there is the whole AI part, which was going to go, and I think you added it, but it's going to grow further in different section and in different parts, subparts, because it's just too wide and too open.
Yes.
AI goes from prescriptive analytics all the way to generative, and every day you open a newspaper, or your newspaper, who's reading newspapers, you open up YouTube or you look
Your
around
browser.
what's
You
going
open your
on, and you
browser.
open up your email and you have 15 different things coming in about new things and ChatGPT 5, and it doesn't change, it runs. But beyond that, the part on change leadership, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
There is so much change in our world, and that's another part we were just loosely talking about just a moment ago. Lots of change in all the enterprise and all the organization, and every time I wonder how much the change may be needed, but on the other hand, it's also distraction.
Yeah.
And how do you balance the gains of change with the cost of change?
This, I think, is the biggest thing we're trying to understand and assess, because this, I think there is a big push out in the market of being agile, being change ready. And yes, you need to teach people how to manage change a little differently, I think, than we've ever done in the world. There's that we've been talking about continuous change management since I first started the survey in 2014, right? So this is not a new concept. We know this is the new model, but I do think we have a stat that I put out last year, and we're going to get another stat this year to see how it compares. But in 2016, the number of big major things that organizations sort of were dealing with was 40% less than what it was in 2023. Can you imagine 40% more big major changes on every business or HR organization? And it's not just HR, it's across your organizations. This is org structure changes and new systems and new tools. And the number went from something like 4 major changes a year in a corporation to like 10 or 12 major changes a year. And that's like a change a month almost for your employees.
Yeah.
Is that actually achieving what you want it to do? Are you maybe not really thinking through what you're doing?
And there is also the fact all these changes often overlap.
Yes.
They do.
You don't just say, okay, this is the month of May, this is the change we'll do over the month of May, and then in June we'll do something else. It's you get the start of the year, people start saying, oh, we'll change this, but at the same time we'll change this. And the people who are changing one part of their organization may not know what's changing on the other side, because they don't necessarily talk, particularly in large organization. Yeah.
Do you think that in HR, because there's so many segmented operations, that each operation is making change for the sake of their own silo, and it's not strategic across the organization?
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing what you guys are seeing. I'll tell you what we're seeing in our data is that it's not just HR that's most of these are business and operations level changes that are coming down that HR then is supporting or making work with, yes. Right? And so I think the bigger question is should somebody just be having an overview across the company about how much change we're asking companies to undertake across the company? This is what a chief strategy officer, chief operation officer, whatever role in your organization has overview across all the functions should be assessing instead of what our goals are and whatever we need to reach those goals. And so we're not really paying attention how we're like, we know what we want to get. We don't know how we want to get there. That is what's killing us a little bit, is I think it's a lack across all the company environments. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's not just HR. And that's what I see happening anyway. There's everybody has their own little piece that they want to influence or change, and it's overwhelming. I mean, just even with what we've been hit with AI changes is overwhelming. And then think about all the other business changes. It's a lot to absorb.
It is, and AI is
like
only
the
starting.
Idea. I'm sorry, Kara. I like the idea of like this overall change officer. Like, who looks across and says yay, nay, or too much, too little?
Well, but independent from too much and too little, I see the need for a change officer to keep track of all the different lanes. Because as
Right.
you said, it's not just in organization structures, it's not just AI, is looking at all the different lanes that are accelerating, slowing down, and changing and modifying, and looking at the impact across. It's almost change swimming lanes at this point.
It really is. And, we were having this conversation about what is AI going to do for us in the future, right? With everything's AI this, right? I think, when I look at the conversation we're having about artificial intelligence, and we've been tracking artificial intelligence in the survey since 2010, I think was the first time we put it on the survey as a question about machine learning, right? And so we've got data that shows actually the reality of what people are paying for, and actually how much they are, we, as much as the world says everybody's using it, last year it was only 16% of organizations who are actually paying for artificial intelligence inside the HR function. Right now, this year that's going to go up, but we're expecting it. We'll see what my number is, but my number from last year said only 30% more. Now that doesn't mean there are people who aren't working with some of the free tools or working with embedded tools, but actually having a budget where you are investing more in it than what you planned the previous year is a conversation to have. There's a difference between what I'm dabbling in and what I'm actually investing in, right?
Yeah.
And so the market's still out as to how much people are willing to put more money into, because are they going to get real benefits out of it, right? I think you should definitely be learning, you should definitely be understanding what's happening, but how much you're going to put behind it financially is a big conversation. What we have found is that in HR, everything that we keep hearing about is job description replace. It'll write new job descriptions. It'll write your performance reviews. It will
Get rid of all those nasty little tasks.
Co-pilot, right? We're like, well, yes, that should have been done 5 years ago, 6 years ago. You don't need a smart AI to do some of that. Some of that stuff is just better using the data we've had for a long time.
Exactly. But the push on it now is because ChatGPT took off. All of a sudden, there's label on it and there's a necessity for it.
Yes. And what I think is going to be really interesting is when we take that AI and we start to actually apply it to the work we are doing inside of our companies, and it becomes more integral as very similar to the human side of our business. We also have to have this side of our business where we're thinking about the data that we're sort of, it's just a data analysis tool with a little bit faster move to it, with a much faster analysis capability. And when we're really thinking about it that way, I think the AI tool will help us do exactly what you talked about. It will help us understand change. It will help us understand the actual output that we can put employees through, right, from a work perspective. The point at which we go beyond performance and we get into unsustainable environments, the point at which we're not changing fast enough. To me, that's the exciting thing about what AI will hopefully help us do, is run our companies in a way that is more human, right?
Hopefully.
True. Hopefully. But, and I still think that at the end, it's still work around, and the conversation will still go around the concept of what kind of data we feed into that AI. Right. Because you say that it will be able to keep track of all the different type of change. Yes, but that depends how we keep track of change. Mm-hmm. Do we keep track of it? Because if we don't keep track of it, there is no AI in the world that will be able to feed us back information about how it is going and how it is impacting other areas of the business.
Right.
Because exactly. AI will not be able to know what we don't keep track of. So it becomes then difficult to know how we keep track of it, how we keep track of different kind of change, and how we can compare them. Because we spoke about different kind of change in the enterprise. We can, and even just from the top of my mind, I can think organizational change. I can think of changes of skills, roles, tasks, and jobs. And then I can think of change of technology, not necessarily only in HR, but all across. How do we keep track of that, and how do we compare those type of changes in a way that is not completely apple to shoes?
Yeah. That's what we should name this podcast. How do we live in a world where we're comparing apples to shoes?
Maybe I will just do that.
I like that.
But that's a real. This is one of the things where I think there was the chief strategy officer for AI for Google, who's now sort of out talking about what's going on, and he's no longer with Google. But he had a big presentation a few months back in Europe about sort of what AI was going to do and where it was going to be heading. And it was a really good presentation. But in his perspective, because in the next 5 to 10 years, we expect AI will be, more intelligent than any human being that's ever lived, right? Like that's a thing that's happening in the data as far as but intelligence is not wisdom, right? And that is a thing I keep telling people. You can be the smartest person in the world. We all know these people, right? And you may not be able to cross a road because you don't understand the context and wisdom of sort of whether this is a good time to cross the road or not to cross the road, right? Yes. So what I do think is, the thing that we have to understand is context is everything. Data is the value of the data has to really be assessed in a way that we are and I think that is playing out right now. You can see it already in what's happening at the enterprise level systems with something like a ChatGPT, right? So you're seeing an environment like ChatGPT where ChatGPT 4 is actually doing because it's open to the whole internet and all that's happening on the internet, which by the way is not the entire world. I just want to let you know there's a lot of things that happen outside of the internet, just FYI, if you've ever worked in the real world. And so their actual math is getting worse for ChatGPT instead of better because of the fact that it's now picking up all the wrong stuff as well as the good stuff, right? Like it's a very sort of it's learning just like any child would that, and if you don't put parameters on what it should take in and not take in, it will be wrong on some things, right?
Oh yeah.
The other model,
wrong answers.
Exactly, right? The other model is we do a very closed, very small data set. This is what we're seeing from all the ERPs, SAP, Workday, Oracle, all of them are saying, I'm going to give you a small data set, keep it very small. It's going to be cleaner. It's going to be, take a little bit longer to do the training, but now I'm going to take this model that was created in ChatGPT and in the other sort of large language model sets, and now I'm going to only let you see what is the correct, supposedly, data, right? Again, there's a whole conversation about, is my company a big enough data set to be able to give you a global, diverse view of the world, right?
Right.
And so I think we're going to be having this conversation about cleanliness of data for a long time and the value of data and where do we get data from. If I were a betting person right now and I were investing in things in the market, I wouldn't be, AI is an interesting conversation. I would be investing in technology that tracks the movement of the real world. Sensors, Internet of Things across the
data
world.
Coming from?
Because that's going to be the conversation I think we're going to be having in 10 years is what sensors are on my garbage can, what sensors are on my gardening equipment, what sensors are on my kids' school environments. That data in the real world is what we don't have right now, and that data in the real world I think is going to become valuable in a way we haven't talked about.
We have it, but we don't control it.
Yeah.
Which is the dangerous part, because we've seen so far a number of the various scandal about the and I can't even remember where the murder case that came up because the doll actually recorded the event. The issues and problems that come up based on if Nest get broken in, people can know whether you're home or not.
Yes.
Yes.
Hence exposing you to theft and other situation, or the toothbrush usage or not getting recorded and potentially being part of an insurance level higher or lower, because if you're not cleaning your teeth, then maybe the insurance doesn't want to pick up the cost of the dental work.
Right.
So all this, but we don't control it yet. We don't control it at the level of the impact, social impact. We don't collect it and we don't thank God so far. But at some point, we'll be in a position to do that.
Yes, we will.
Brother.
Yeah, that's a big brother
lives.
world.
But
Yeah.
but that is when AI will be able, I think, to have a different conversation with the market, right? Than what it's currently having. Because right now we're basing it all off of what it sees in a very small microcosm. As much as the internet is a big place, it is still not our real lives, right?
True.
It's still not the world
True.
we live in.
That's a very good point. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll need to talk about that next year.
I know. Yeah. So anybody who's going to get the report, I would definitely say watch out for a lot of AI conversation in each category that we track, right?
Sure.
So we're not gonna just do a big conversation about it, we're gonna do it in each. So we're gonna talk about AI and payroll, AI and survey development, AI and rewards and recognition. But we're also going to be talking about non-AI innovations, because there are some really cool things happening in the market that aren't just AI driven, but are also about this data integration conversation, right? We're seeing a lot of integration happening because the AI is not working without the data. That I think is the thing we've been talking about for a long time, right? Like integrating all of these data sets in a way where they can speak to each other is probably not as many people are paying attention to it, but we're seeing all the big ERPs create major integration platform tools, right? We're seeing all the small vendors doing a better job of figuring out their integration strategies and partnership strategies. And we're seeing all the SI as system integrators spending, because that's where they're getting their money at now, is integration conversations, not just implementation conversations like it used to be. So that I think is going to be a real conversation that we'll be talking about in the next year or two that nobody else is talking about, but is part of this AI conversation.
I think it's to some extent I see it as the necessary preparation to any AI. If we don't have that conversation, we might as well not even start talking about AI, because we need the data and we need the processes and we need the skills. And if we have those,
we need accurate data, true data.
Oh,
and we need to know when the data is suggestive of something versus fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a big conversation. That's going to be next year, I think. Yeah. Hopefully next year we'll have a bit of a clearer idea, because this year with the explosion of AI, people are looking at AI and saying, we want AI. Well, wait a second. We need to put down some stepping stones.
Playing with it a lot, which is, you do have to experiment with it, but then what is true? It's well, you got to question everything. I mean, in the old days, that's how we were taught to question everything.
My last statement, as I was sort of wrapping up my keynote this year, and I've been sort of really talking about it in all of my sort of customer advisory boards that I've been doing. I do a lot of CAB events. I've been telling people judgment will be the skill you'll be looking for the most.
Critical thinking.
You have to have a judgment, the ability to really judge what you're seeing in front of you in a way that we have not had to hone probably in the last 10 to 15 years, because deep fakes are going to be a reality when it comes to video, audio, as well as. So one of the most exciting things I've seen in sort of the non-HR world is, I don't know if you guys are country music followers or not, but Randy Travis is a big country music star from the 90s, right? Had a stroke, had really struggled with, couldn't speak very well. Well, they had taken his voice and his voice patterns and some of the things he had written down about music that he'd been wanting to write but couldn't get out. And they recreated, he just launched a new album, which just got awarded at the American Country Music Awards. And by the way, one of our all good friends, if everybody knows the HR space, Trish McFarlane, has also recently had a chance to sort of interact with Randy in some work that she's doing. So I think if you get a chance to see Trish out on the road, ask her about it. It is really fascinating to see that he's been able to launch a record using artificial intelligence for the first time, and people are accepting it and excited about it. And that's, I think, we forget about how beautiful this technology can be. Sometimes it's really easy to get scared about it, really easy to get scared about the jobs it's might replace. It will change our world. It's going to change it for both good and bad. We just have to figure out how to how to leverage it for the things that are amazing, right?
You know, every technology has changed our world.
Yes.
And it's a good thing, because without
None more
life is
dramatically
about
than
change.
this, though.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for so many opening. I love the positive side that came out now at the end.
Yes.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't know. And it's like, wow. Yeah, it opens a world of positive thinking rather than a gloom. Love
Yeah,
that.
I made a note to look up Randy Travis's award so I can see.
Yeah, look at him up. Look at his new record. It's a brand new. It's just released. But I think that's the direction we can head with some of this.
Yeah.
You know, if we really think outside of the box, if we think about how we can leverage it for good. I'm the biggest proponent, everybody knows, about risk management. Always make sure you know where your data's at. Always make sure you know what's being captured. Always make sure you understand how the technology came to that decision. But that doesn't mean that we want to say no to everything too, right? I think so. Yeah.
Which goes in the direction, and everybody talks about understandable and transparent.
Yes.
It makes sense, which means that we also educate ourselves in understanding what is transparent and what is understandable.
Yes.
Because you cannot just say, oh, it's a black box, but I don't understand.
Yes.
You need to educate yourself, and then it makes sense.
Yeah.
So
one of the things we'll have in the report this year for everybody who participates is, if you participate, first of all, you get access to the full report for free, which I think is a big thing for your audience to know, because there is a fee for it otherwise. The second thing is that if they participate, when we do that AI section, one of the things we will be writing about is what kind of questions you should ask and what kind of things you should expect to know in each of the categories from that AI conversation, which is what you just talked about, Kara. And then the other thing I think that I think is going to be really important when people get access to it is that transparency conversation. The reason we do user experience and vendor satisfaction ratings in our research is so that people have their voice heard. And we share that data back with not just the market as a whole, but also with all the vendors about what comments we're hearing and what feedback we're hearing. Because no technology is perfect, and there is technology out there that does amazing things if you figure out how to use it well. And we want to get that feedback in the hands of the people who are doing that work. And so that transparency is a really important part of this conversation, I think. Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you for another fabulous conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Stacey. It's great to see you again, hear from you again.
Yeah. And I'll make sure that I put in the down there the links to the survey. I'll format it and try to get it out within the next week, so people will have the time. And I'll put it out on LinkedIn. So when you see it, push it out and push it further, because the more people actually participate to the survey, the more it's relevant, and they'll get the survey at the end. So it's a win-win-win for everybody.
Well, and let's make a plan so that we don't take a year and a half next time. Let's plan to do this sometime November, December of this year. I might be having some updates to my book come out at that point in time. We'll have some new data. And if we get enough people who respond through your individual link, so audience, if you're here listening, we can bring that data back and do a special breakout maybe of a topic that's most interesting to your audience. So I will offer that up to everybody out there listening, is that if you kind of say what topics are most interesting to you, our survey does ask that question. We'll bring that back and we'll do a specific conversation that maybe this fall on it.
Like
that sounds
consulting.
Great. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks,
absolutely.
Guys.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening, and let us know what is interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye for now.